General Kethvar stood in the center of the great council chamber on Zarion Prime. His four arms moved wildly as he spoke to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The high command of the Hegemony Empire sat in their tall chairs, looking down at him with cold eyes. They did not want to hear what he had to say. "You must listen to me," Kethvar said, his voice echoing in the huge room. "The humans cannot be forced to join our war. They must stay neutral." Admiral Zexthai laughed from his seat. His long neck swayed as he shook his head. "General, you worry too much about these humans. They are nothing but children playing with toys in space. They have been flying between stars for only 200 years. We have ruled the galaxy for 3,000. "That is exactly why you should fear them," Kethvar replied. He pressed a button on his arm device, and images filled the air around him. Pictures of human wars, human weapons, human soldiers covered the chamber. "Look at what they have done to their own planet. Look at how they fight." The images showed terrible things: cities burning, armies clashing across frozen fields, ships sinking in dark oceans, flying machines dropping death from the sky. But the worst images were the ones that showed human faces. They showed no fear. Even when facing certain death, the humans kept fighting. "They call it total war," Kethvar explained. "When humans fight, there are no civilians. Everyone becomes a soldier. Mothers teach children to make bombs. Doctors create poisons. Teachers become spies. They turn their entire world into a weapon." High Commander Velthon leaned forward in his chair. His massive bulk made the chair creak. "These are just pictures, General. Old stories from their primitive past. Now they are civilized. They have learned to live in peace." "No," Kethvar said firmly. "They have learned to live with each other. That is different. Very different. They stopped fighting among themselves because they had nothing left to prove. They had already won every war that mattered." More images appeared. These ones showed human colonies on distant worlds. Kethvar had visited many of them secretly over the years. He had studied these strange beings who chose to live on planets that would kill most other species. "Look at where they build their homes," he said. "Worlds with poisonous air. Worlds where the ground shakes and mountains explode. Worlds where the storms can tear apart our strongest ships. They call these places slightly dangerous and raise their children there." "So they are tough," said Admiral Zexthai. "That does not make them dangerous to us. We have weapons that can turn planets into dust. We have fleets that stretch from star to star. What can a few million humans do against the might of our empire?" Kethvar felt his heart sink. They were not listening. They had already made up their minds. "You think like prey animals," he said quietly. "You think that being bigger means being stronger. But humans are predators. They think differently." He showed them more pictures. These were from human history books that he had studied for years. Humans fighting creatures much larger than themselves. Humans crossing impossible distances to reach new lands. Humans surviving in places where nothing should be able to live. "They have a saying," Kethvar continued. "If you want peace, prepare for war. But they have another saying that is more important. Never start a fight you are not willing to finish, and humans always finish their fights." The chamber grew quiet for a moment. Then High Commander Velthon spoke. "General Kethvar, your concerns are noted. But the decision has already been made. The rebellion grows stronger every day. We need more soldiers. We need more ships. We need more weapons. The humans will provide all of these things." "And if they refuse?" Kethvar asked. "Then we will take what we need," Admiral Zexthai said simply. "As we always do. As we did with the Korthak and the Zenith and all the others. Species that refuse to serve the Empire are taught to serve through force." Kethvar tried one more time. He pulled up the final image. It was a human child, no more than 10 years old, standing in the ruins of a destroyed city. The child held a weapon that was almost as big as she was. Her clothes were torn and dirty, but her eyes were calm, determined. "This picture was taken during their last great war," Kethvar said. "This child fought against soldiers for 3 months. She killed 17 enemy troops before she was captured. When they asked her why she kept fighting when she could not win, she said something that should terrify you all." The chamber waited. She said, "Winning was never the point. Making you pay for every step was the point." High Commander Velthon stood up. His decision was final. "The order is given, General. You will deliver our demands to the human government. They will provide 10 million soldiers and 40% of their industrial output to our war effort. If they refuse, their worlds will be pacified." Kethvar felt his 4 hearts beating fast. He had failed. "You are making a terrible mistake. The humans have lived on a world that has tried to kill them for millions of years. They have survived ice ages and asteroid strikes and volcanic eruptions that would destroy entire civilizations. They are not like other species. They do not surrender." "Everyone surrenders," Admiral Zexathai said. "They just need the right motivation." Kethvar gathered his data files and prepared to leave. As he walked toward the door, he turned back one last time. "You are about to learn why every species that has studied Earth calls it a death world," he said. "And you are about to learn why the humans who come from death worlds do not fear death." The door closed behind him with a soft sound. In 3 days, he would deliver the Empire's demands to humanity. In 3 days, the galaxy would change forever. As he walked down the long hallway, Kethvar began to plan. If his own people would not listen to wisdom, perhaps he could survive what was coming by offering his knowledge to those who would appreciate it. The humans, he thought, would appreciate it very much indeed. Ambassador Velkar looked at the blue and green world spinning slowly below his ship. New Geneva was a small human colony, home to only 12 million people. It should have been easy to intimidate. That was why the High Command had chosen it for their first official contact with humanity. 50 Imperial warships hung in space around the planet like a metal storm cloud. Each ship could destroy a city with a single shot. Together, they could turn the entire world into burning rock within hours. This was how the Empire always delivered its messages. Show overwhelming force first, then make reasonable demands. "Open a channel to their government," Velkar ordered. He straightened his ceremonial armor and prepared his speech. In his 300 years as an Imperial ambassador, he had delivered this same message to 47 different species. Every one of them had chosen to serve the Empire rather than face destruction. The screen in front of him lit up. A human woman appeared, sitting behind a simple wooden desk. She looked young by human standards, though Velkar knew that human aging was different from most species. Her dark hair was pulled back, and her brown eyes were calm as she looked at him. "I am President Sarah Chen of the New Geneva Colonial Government," she said. Her voice was steady and polite. "I understand you wanted to speak with us." Velkar was surprised. Most species trembled when they first saw an Imperial ambassador. His massive frame, sharp teeth, and glowing red eyes usually caused immediate fear. This human showed no sign of being afraid. "I am Ambassador Velkar of the Hegemony Empire," he said in his deepest, most threatening voice. "I bring a message from the High Command to your species." "Please go ahead," President Chen said, as if she was talking to a neighbor about the weather. Velkar began his prepared speech. "The Empire has generously decided to offer humanity a place in our great civilization. In exchange for this honor, humans will provide 10 million soldiers to our military forces and 40% of your industrial production to support our war against the criminal rebels who threaten galactic peace." President Chen listened without speaking. She did not even blink. "If humanity accepts this generous offer," Velkar continued, Your species will enjoy the protection and benefits of Imperial membership. Your worlds will be safe. Your people will prosper under Imperial guidance. And if we refuse? President Chen asked. Velkar smiled, showing all of his sharp teeth. This was always his favorite part. If you refuse, your worlds will be pacified, your populations will be restructured to better serve Imperial needs, resistance will be corrected through appropriate measures. President Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked a single question that would change everything. Are you threatening our children? The question surprised Velkar. Most species asked about military forces or defensive capabilities or negotiation possibilities. This human was asking about younglings. Non-compliance will result in population restructuring, he said slowly. All age groups will be affected as necessary. President Chen stood up from her chair. For the first time, Velkar saw something change in her eyes. They grew cold in a way that made him uncomfortable. Ambassador Velkar, she said, humanity chooses neutrality in your conflict. We have no interest in your war or your empire. We wish to be left alone to live our lives in peace. Velkar laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that had frightened countless species. You have 50 million soldiers across 200 worlds, human. My fleet alone could destroy your homeworld before lunch. You are in no position to choose anything. Perhaps, President Chen said. But if you force us to fight, we will remember who struck the first blow, and we will make sure our children remember too. Your children will serve the Empire, Velkar said firmly, or they will not survive to serve anyone. President Chen nodded slowly. Thank you for making your position clear, Ambassador. You will have our formal response within 24 hours. The screen went dark. Velkar was pleased with himself. The human leader had been properly intimidated. Tomorrow, humanity would submit like all the others. He ordered his fleet to maintain positions around the planet and went to his quarters to prepare his victory report. That night, everything changed. The flagship Eternal Glory was the pride of the Imperial fleet. Its shields could stop asteroid impacts. Its armor could survive the explosion of a small star. Its security systems were the most advanced in the galaxy. None of that mattered to Marcus Webb. Marcus was a human freighter pilot who had requested permission to dock with the flagship. He claimed to be carrying medical supplies for sick Imperial crew members, which was a standard diplomatic courtesy. His ship was small and old, clearly no threat to anyone. The Imperial security officers scanned his cargo hold and found exactly what he said he was carrying: boxes of medicine, food packages, and personal items for the crew. They scanned Marcus himself and found that he was unarmed and carried no dangerous devices. What they did not find was that Marcus had spent 10 years as a computer programmer before becoming a pilot. They did not know that his grandfather had been a military engineer who taught him how machines really worked. They did not realize that humans had been studying captured Imperial technology for decades. Marcus walked through the ship's corridors carrying his medical supplies, smiling and chatting with the crew members he met. He was friendly and helpful, exactly what everyone expected from a primitive human trying to be nice to his superiors. While he walked, he was also memorizing everything: the layout of the ship, the location of critical systems, the way the computer networks connected to each other. He had practiced this in his head 1,000 times using stolen Imperial ship blueprints. When he reached the computer core, Marcus did something that should have been impossible. He convinced the ship's main computer that he was an authorized repair technician performing routine maintenance. All it took was a few commands entered on a maintenance panel using codes that no human should have known. 6 hours later, Marcus left the ship with empty supply boxes and a friendly wave to the security guards. 12 hours after that, the Eternal Glory exploded. The reactor containment failed in a way that Imperial engineers said was impossible. The explosion was so powerful that it destroyed 3 escort ships and damaged 5 others. 8,000 Imperial crew members died in seconds. 20 minutes after the explosion, every human communication system in the galaxy carried the same message. This is President Sarah Chen of humanity. We said we wanted to stay neutral. You chose otherwise. Remember that you fired the first shot when you threatened our children. Everything that happens now is because you would not leave us alone. Ambassador Velkar survived because his ship was positioned far from the flagship. As he watched the wreckage burning in space, he finally understood what General Kethvar had been trying to tell the High Command. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not mass armies and charge into battle. They smiled and brought you gifts and learned your weaknesses. Then they struck without warning and disappeared like smoke. The war had begun. Captain Jorasim had conquered 17 worlds for the Empire. He knew how invasions were supposed to work. His forces would arrive, destroy the enemy military, and accept surrender from the civilian government. It usually took 3 days. He had been fighting on the human world of Kepler 438b for 6 months, and he still did not control a single city. "Report!" he demanded as he entered the command center of his ground base. The base was surrounded by walls 10 meters high and protected by energy shields. It should have been completely safe. Lieutenant Vexen looked up from his screen with tired eyes. "Sir, we lost another patrol last night. 12 soldiers gone without a trace. We found their equipment scattered in a children's playground." "How?" Jorasim asked. "How do children kill trained Imperial soldiers?" "The playground equipment was booby-trapped," Vexen explained. "The swings had been turned into catapults that launched explosives. The slide was covering a pit filled with sharpened metal spikes. The sandbox was actually a minefield." Jorasim felt his head ache. This was the 3rd patrol lost to children's traps this week. "Where are the adult humans? Where are their soldiers?" "That's the problem, sir. We can't tell the difference. The grandmother who runs the bakery is also the one who taught the children how to make bombs from cooking ingredients. The school teacher who waves at our patrols during the day is the same person who sets sniper traps at night. The doctor who treats our wounded soldiers is also gathering information about our medical weaknesses." Another officer approached with more bad news. "Sir, the toy factory in Sector 7 has been destroyed." "Good," Jorasim said. "At least the children won't have any more toys to turn into weapons." "Sir, you don't understand. They destroyed it themselves. But first they converted the entire production line to manufacture military explosives. They made enough bombs to arm every civilian in the city. Then they blew up the factory so we couldn't capture it." Jorasim stared at the tactical display showing the city below. Red dots marked areas under Imperial control. Blue dots marked human resistance. The screen was almost entirely blue. "How long to manufacture more bombing equipment?" he asked. "They don't need to manufacture anything, sir. Yesterday we discovered that the recycling center has been turning garbage into ammunition. Broken bottles become shrapnel. Old electronics become guidance systems for rockets. Food waste becomes chemical weapons." A communication officer called from across the room. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the human mayor." "Put it through," Jorasim said. Maybe finally they were ready to surrender. The screen showed an elderly human woman sitting in what looked like a normal office. Behind her, explosions lit up the night sky as the battle for her city continued. "Captain Jorasim," she said politely. "I am Mayor Elizabeth Walsh. I'm calling to inform you that we're temporarily closing the schools." Jorasim was confused. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because we need the children to help with the harvest," she explained. "The harvest of scrap metal from your destroyed vehicles. The children are very good at finding useful pieces. They're also excellent at setting up defensive positions in areas where your soldiers feel safe." "This is madness," Jorasim said. You're using children as soldiers. Mayor Walsh shook her head. No, Captain. We're not using children as soldiers. We're teaching children to protect their homes. There's a difference. The communication ended. Jorasim turned to his staff. How many worlds are we fighting on now? 47 human colonies are under attack, Lieutenant Vexon reported. Reports from all front commanders are similar to ours. Humans don't fight like other species. They don't have armies. They don't have military bases. Their entire civilization has become one giant military unit. Jorasim reviewed the reports from other worlds. On New Tokyo, humans had converted a children's hospital into a fortress that had held out for 3 months. The doctors and nurses fought alongside the patients. Even humans who were sick or injured continued to fight from their beds. On Kepler 22b, human farmers had turned their agricultural equipment into weapons. Machines designed to plant crops now launched explosive seeds at Imperial forces. Irrigation systems had been converted to spray poison gas. Even the livestock had been trained to attack Imperial soldiers. The worst report came from Proxima Station, a human mining colony. The miners had turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapon. They used mining charges to redirect asteroids toward Imperial ships. The explosions were so large they could be seen from nearby star systems. "Sir," a technician called out, "we're receiving a priority message from General Kethvar." Kethvar appeared on the main screen. He looked older than Jorasim remembered. His scales had lost their shine, and his eyes were filled with worry. "Captain," Kethvar said without greeting, "what is your current casualty report?" 60% losses, sir. Both equipment and personnel. We estimate it will take another year to pacify this single world, assuming we receive significant reinforcements. Kethvar was quiet for a moment. "Captain, I have received similar reports from every human world under attack. The Empire has lost 40% of our total fleet strength. The rebellion has launched major offensives in 3 sectors, taking advantage of our weakness." Jorasim felt cold. "Sir, what are your orders?" "My orders come from the High Command," Kethvar said. "Continue the assault. Take the human homeworld. End this quickly before we lose everything." "And your personal advice, sir?" Kethvar looked around, as if checking to make sure no one could hear him. "Captain, I tried to warn them. I told them that humans were different. I told them that forcing a war with Earth was the worst mistake in Imperial history." "What do you think will happen when we attack Earth itself?" Jorasim asked. "I think we will learn that we have been fighting human colonies," Kethvar said quietly. "Frontier settlements with limited resources and small populations. Earth has 40 billion humans and the industrial capacity to arm all of them." The communication ended, leaving Jorasim staring at reports from his struggling campaign. His forces controlled the landing zones and nothing else. Humans had turned every building into a fortress, every street into a battlefield, every child into a defender. Outside his command center, explosions lit up the night. Somewhere in the darkness, human children were probably building more traps. Human grandmothers were probably teaching teenagers how to make poison gas. Human teachers were probably planning the next ambush. For the first time in his military career, Captain Jorasim began to wonder if the Empire had chosen the wrong enemy to fight. Admiral Thekmor commanded the largest fleet in Imperial history. 1,000 warships stretched across space in perfect formation, each one capable of destroying a moon. At the center of the fleet were the planet cracker ships, weapons so powerful they could split worlds in half. "Today we end this war," he announced to his captains over the communication network. "Today we destroy the human homeworld and show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Empire." The fleet moved toward Earth like a metal storm. Intelligence reports said the planet had 40 billion humans and strong defenses, but Admiral Thekmor was confident. No single world could stand against such overwhelming force. As they approached the edge of Earth's solar system, the first surprise appeared on their scanners. "Sir," the sensor officer reported. "We're detecting massive artificial structures throughout the asteroid belt, thousands of them." "Mining stations," Admiral Thekmore said dismissively. "Humans are known for their industrial activity." "No, sir. These are weapons platforms. Each one is the size of a battleship." Admiral Thekmore studied the tactical display. The entire asteroid belt had been converted into a ring of gun stations surrounding the inner solar system. Metal frameworks connected rocks that had been hollowed out and filled with weapons. "How long would it take to build something like this?" he asked. "Based on the size and complexity, sir, at least 50 years. Admiral Thekmore felt his confidence slip slightly. Humans had been preparing for this war since before they even met the Empire. They had spent decades turning their home system into a fortress. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "We have planet cracker weapons. We can destroy any defenses they build." The fleet moved closer to Earth. Mars appeared on their screens, red and barren as expected. But as they watched, the planet began to change. Massive sections of the surface opened like flower petals, revealing hidden structures beneath. "Missile batteries," the tactical officer reported. "Thousands of them. They're launching now." Space filled with streaks of light as Mars unleashed its hidden arsenal. But these were not ordinary missiles. They moved too fast and turned too sharply to be simple explosives. "Hunter-killer drones," Admiral Thekmore realized with growing alarm. "Artificial intelligence-guided weapons." The drones swarmed toward the Imperial fleet like angry insects. Each one was small and fast, designed to target a specific ship and penetrate its defenses. The Imperial ships opened fire with everything they had, but there were too many targets moving too quickly. "Sir, we're losing ships," the communication officer reported. "The drones are targeting our engines and weapon systems. They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to disable us." Admiral Thekmore understood the strategy. Humans wanted to capture Imperial ships, not destroy them. They wanted to learn from Imperial technology and add it to their own capabilities. "All ships, focus fire on Earth itself," he commanded. "Ignore the drones. Use the planet crackers now." The largest ships in the fleet turned their ultimate weapons toward the blue and green world, spinning peacefully in space. These were the same weapons that had destroyed rebel strongholds and convinced entire species to surrender rather than face annihilation. As the planet cracker ships charged their weapons, Earth's moon moved. "Sir," the sensor officer's voice was full of shock. "The moon is not in its predicted orbital position." Admiral Thekmore looked at the tactical display. Earth's moon was indeed in the wrong place. It had moved closer to Earth, as if something had pushed it from its natural orbit. "That's impossible," he said. "You can't move a moon without destroying the planet it orbits." "Sir, the moon's surface is opening." Admiral Thekmore watched in horror as Earth's moon revealed its secret. The entire satellite had been hollowed out and converted into the largest weapons platform ever built. Missile launchers, railguns, and energy weapons covered its surface like metal scales. "How long?" he whispered. "Sir, how long would it take to convert a moon into a weapons platform?" The tactical officer ran quick calculations. "Sir, a project of this scale would require at least 200 years of constant work." 200 years. Humans had been preparing for this war since before they even knew the Empire existed. They had been ready for someone like Admiral Thekmore to arrive with overwhelming force, and they had spent centuries preparing their response. The moon opened fire. The weapons were unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. Railguns accelerated projectiles to nearly the speed of light. Energy beams cut through Imperial shields as if they didn't exist. Missiles split into smaller missiles that split again, creating clouds of destruction that no defense could stop. 12 planet cracker ships died in the first 10 seconds. "All ships retreat," Admiral Thekmore ordered. "Emergency jump to hyperspace." But the humans had planned for that too. Some kind of interference field made hyperspace jumps impossible. The Imperial fleet was trapped in normal space, forced to fight conventionally against an enemy that had spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this battle. That was when Admiral Elizabeth Harper made her appearance. Her face appeared on every screen in the Imperial fleet, broadcast on all communication frequencies. She was an older human woman wearing a simple military uniform. Behind her, the bridge of her ship was filled with calm, professional crew members going about their duties. "Imperial Fleet," she said in a steady voice. "This is Admiral Harper of the Earth Defense Force. You came here to destroy our world and kill our people. You came here to threaten our children." Admiral Thekmore tried to jam the transmission. But human technology was more advanced than he had realized. Harper continued speaking as if she was having a friendly conversation. "We tried to stay neutral," she said. "We asked to be left alone. Your General Kethvar warned you about the consequences of forcing this war. You should have listened to him." On his tactical display, Admiral Thekmore watched his fleet dying. The asteroid belt weapons platforms were systematically destroying his outer ships. The moon continued its devastating bombardment of his center formation. Mars launched wave after wave of hunter-killer drones that picked apart his remaining vessels. "This war ends today," Admiral Harper announced, "but not the way you planned." Her ship moved toward the center of the Imperial formation, accelerating far beyond what should have been possible for a vessel of its size. Admiral Thekmore realized what she was planning to do. "She's going to ram the command ship," he said. "No, sir," his tactical officer corrected. "She's going to detonate her power core inside our formation. She's turning her ship into a bomb." Admiral Thekmore tried to order his ships to destroy Harper's vessel, but it was too late. She had timed her approach perfectly, using the chaos of battle to get close before anyone realized her intention. Admiral Harper's final transmission reached every ship in both fleets. "We told you we wanted to stay neutral. You really should have listened." The explosion created an artificial star that lasted for 17 seconds. When the light faded, 300 Imperial ships were gone. The remaining vessels were damaged beyond repair. Admiral Thekmore's flagship was one of the few ships that survived, but barely. As he looked at the wreckage of his fleet, he received one final message from Earth. It was President Chen, older now but still calm. "Admiral, the offer still stands. We're willing to discuss neutrality, but the price has gone up considerably." General Kethvar stood at the front of the rebuilt Galactic Council chamber on Earth. The irony was not lost on him. 5 years ago, he had been an Imperial intelligence officer trying to warn his people about the dangers of fighting humanity. Today, he was humanity's chief ambassador to the galaxy. The chamber was different now. Instead of the cold, intimidating design of the old Imperial Council, this room was built with human practicality in mind. Large windows showed the blue sky and green forests of Earth. Comfortable chairs allowed representatives from dozens of species to attend meetings without feeling threatened or uncomfortable. "The Council will now hear the monthly neutrality report," Kethvar announced. His voice carried across the chamber as representatives from across the galaxy listened. "This month, there were 0 attempts to force human worlds into military conflicts," he continued. "There were 0 attempts to demand tribute from human colonies. There were 0 attempts to threaten human civilians or military personnel." The chamber was completely quiet. It had been this way for 3 years now, ever since the galaxy learned what happened when someone disturbed humanity's peace. Kethvar looked at the assembled representatives. Many of them had been his enemies during the war. Others were former Imperial allies who had quickly changed sides when they saw how the conflict was ending. A few were from species that had remained neutral throughout the fighting. All of them were alive because they had been smart enough to surrender before humanity decided they were too dangerous to leave alone. "Before we proceed to other business," Kethvar said. "I want to remind everyone why we are here. 5 years ago, the Hegemony Empire made a simple request of humanity. We asked them to choose a side in our war against the rebellion." He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it was then. Red areas marked Imperial territory. Blue areas showed rebel-controlled space. Green dots scattered throughout both regions marked human colonies. "Humanity chose neutrality," Kethvar continued. "They asked to be left alone to live their lives in peace. The Imperial response was to threaten their children and demand their submission." The display changed to show the galaxy as it was now. There were no more red or blue areas. Instead, the entire galaxy was marked with a new color, yellow, indicating the Terran Protection Zone. "The war lasted 18 months, Kethvar said. When it ended, the Hegemony Empire no longer existed. The rebellion had dissolved into individual planetary governments, and humanity found itself in control of the most powerful military force in galactic history." Ambassador Yethka of the former Rebel Alliance raised one of her 6 arms to speak. "Ambassador Kethvar, could you remind the Council what happened to species that attempted to continue fighting after the Earth Directive was issued?" Kethvar nodded. "The Skarath hierarchy refused to accept human authority and attempted to conquer former Imperial worlds. Their military was completely destroyed within 6 days. However, their civilian population was unharmed, and they were allowed to form a new democratic government." "And the Void Hunters?" asked Representative Nextall from the Outer Rim territories. "The Void Hunters attempted to raid human medical ships carrying aid to war refugees. They were eliminated as a military force within 48 hours. Again, their civilian populations were relocated to suitable worlds and given resources to build new lives." The pattern was clear to everyone in the chamber. Humanity would destroy any military force that threatened galactic peace, but they went to extraordinary lengths to protect innocent civilians. It was a kind of warfare that most species had never seen before. "The current galactic structure operates under 3 basic principles," Kethvar explained. "First, humanity maintains armed neutrality in all conflicts. Second, any species that threatens human interests or galactic peace will face immediate response from Earth Defense Forces. Third, humans serve as arbitrators in disputes between other species." Representative Jolmar from the Epsilon sector stood up. "Ambassador, some of our people ask why humanity doesn't simply rule the galaxy directly. They have the power to force any policy they choose." Kethvar smiled. After 5 years of working with humans, he understood them better than most of his own species ever had. "Because ruling the galaxy is not what humans want," he explained. "They never wanted to conquer anyone. They never wanted to control anyone. They just wanted to be left alone to raise their children and build their lives in peace." "But they could demand tribute," Representative Jolmar pressed. "They could force other species to serve them." "They could," Kethvar agreed, "but humans learned long ago that forcing others to serve you creates enemies. It's much easier to be left alone if everyone around you is happy and prosperous." He activated another display showing economic data from across the galaxy. Trade between human and non-human worlds had increased by 400% since the war ended. Technological development had accelerated as humans shared many of their innovations freely. Several species had achieved significant improvements in living standards by adopting human social and economic practices. Humans discovered something that the Empire never understood, Kethvar continued. Happy neighbors are peaceful neighbors. Prosperous species don't start wars. People who have good lives don't threaten other people's children. The session continued for several more hours as representatives discussed trade agreements, territorial disputes, and scientific cooperation projects. Everything was calm and orderly. Every decision was reached through negotiation and compromise. As the meeting ended, Kethvar remained in the chamber to review the next day's agenda. A young human aide approached him with a data tablet. "General, she said. "We've received 3 applications from planetary governments requesting human protection from aggressive neighbors." "Approved," Kethvar said without hesitation. "Standard protocol. Send diplomatic teams to negotiate peaceful solutions. If diplomacy fails, send military advisors to help them defend themselves." "And if the aggressive neighbors don't get the message?" Kethvar thought about his years serving the Empire, when problems were solved through overwhelming force and intimidation. Then he thought about how humans approach the same problems. "Then we send Admiral Chen to have a conversation with them," he said. "Sarah Chen has a talent for explaining things in ways that people understand." The aide smiled and made notes on her tablet. Admiral Chen was President Chen's daughter, and she had inherited her mother's gift for making humanity's position very clear to potential troublemakers. As Kethvar walked out of the council chamber, he passed the memorial wall that honored those who died in the war. Names from dozens of species covered the surface, including many of his former comrades from the Imperial military. At the center of the wall was a simple message in multiple languages. They chose war. We chose to end it. Below that was a quote from the human philosopher Sun Tzu, translated into every known language. "The supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting." Kethvar paused at the memorial for a moment, then continued toward his office. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conflicts to resolve, new attempts by someone to upset the peace that humanity had built. But tonight, 40 trillion beings across the galaxy would sleep safely in their beds, knowing that somewhere in Earth's orbital defenses, human soldiers were keeping watch. The galaxy had learned what Kethvar knew from the beginning. When humans say they want to be left alone, the smartest response is to leave them alone. Everyone was finally getting what they wanted. The galaxy had peace, and humanity had what they had asked for from the very beginning: the right to live their lives without interference from anyone. It had only cost the lives of 2 empires and the destruction of 1,000 fleets to teach the galaxy this simple lesson. Some lessons, Kethvar reflected, are more expensive than others,